6 hours before the first soldier hit the beaches on D-Day, 181 men landed silently in the dark. And took the most important bridge in Europe in just 10 minutes. This video covers the capture of Pegasus Bridge in World War II. The very first action of D-Day. It covers why one small canal bridge in Normandy mattered more than any beach, how a force landed by glider took it before the Germans knew what hit them, and why losing it doomed the German plan to throw the invasion back into the sea. Stay until the end, because the man who led this mission was not a career soldier at all, and the first Allied soldier to die on D-Day fell here, in the first minutes, crossing this bridge. Why would one small bridge matter more than an entire beach? Because of what crossed it. On the eastern edge of the D-Day landings sat Sword Beach, and just inland ran the Caen Canal and the Orne River, side by side. 2 road bridges crossed them near the village of Bénouville. According to Wikipedia's account of the operation, these bridges were the only exit eastward for British forces landing at Sword. That cut both ways. If the Germans held the bridges, their tanks could pour across and roll up the whole eastern flank of the invasion. If the British held them, German armor was locked out, and the paratroopers dropping east of the river would not be cut off and destroyed. The Germans understood this. They had wired both bridges with explosives, ready to blow them the moment the Allies threatened. Whoever controlled these 2 crossings controlled the fate of the entire eastern flank, and the Germans were sure any attack would come from the sea, giving them time to react. It did not come from the sea. So who do you send to grab a bridge before the enemy can blow it up? Not who you would expect. The mission went to D Company of the 2nd Battalion, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire Light Infantry, led by Major John Howard. Before the war, Howard had been a police officer. He was not a lifelong soldier, but he was relentless. According to the histories, he drove his men through some of the hardest training in the British Army, practicing street fighting with live ammunition in bombed-out cities. The plan had no real precedent. 6 large gliders, each carrying about 28 men, would be towed across the English Channel by bombers, then cut loose in the dark to glide down without engines, in silence, and land right next to the bridges. In total, 181 men. The margin was almost impossibly thin. If the German guards had even a couple of minutes of warning, they would flip the switch and drop the bridges into the water. The whole plan depended on landing so close that the men could reach the bridge before the enemy understood what was happening. Could gliders really land in the dark close enough to matter? They could. At 16 minutes past midnight, on June 6, 1944, the first glider slammed down. The pilot, Staff Sergeant Jim Walwork, brought it in so hard that he and his co-pilot were thrown right through the cockpit windshield and knocked unconscious. Major Howard was stunned too, his helmet jammed down over his eyes. But the landing was a masterpiece. According to Wikipedia, 5 of the gliders came down as close as 47 yards from their targets. Walwork's glider had stopped almost on top of the canal bridge. The Germans had heard the tow planes earlier, but they had no idea gliders full of soldiers were now sitting beside them in the dark. There was a cost before a shot was even fired. When the number 2 glider crashed, Lance Corporal Fred Greenhalgh was thrown out and knocked unconscious into a pond, where he drowned. He was the first man to die in the operation, though not from enemy fire. How long does it take to capture the most important bridge in Europe? 10 minutes. Lieutenant Den Brotheridge led his platoon in a dead run across the canal bridge. A German sentry fired a flare, and a machine gunner in a cafe on the far bank opened up. Brotheridge threw a grenade that knocked out a machine gun position, but a burst caught him in the neck and back. He fell on the far side of the bridge. According to multiple accounts, Brotheridge died soon after, and he is widely recognized as the first Allied soldier killed by enemy fire on D-Day. His wife, Margaret, was 8 months pregnant back in England. The Royal Engineers, who had trained for exactly this, raced under the bridge and pulled away the demolition charges. The wires were cut. The explosives never went off. The river bridge, 400 yards away, fell just as fast, its small garrison overwhelmed. By around 10 minutes past midnight, both bridges were in British hands, intact. Howard sent his code words up the chain, by radio and even by carrier pigeon. Ham and jam. Both bridges taken. Both bridges whole. If the Germans had tanks nearby, why did they not just take the bridges back? Because their whole command was in chaos. The officer responsible for the bridges, Major Hans Schmidt, heard the shooting and drove toward them in his staff car. According to the histories, British fire killed his escort and wounded and captured Schmidt himself within the hour. The report that should have raced up the chain never arrived cleanly. It got worse higher up. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who commanded the coastal defenses, was not even in France. He had gone home to Germany for his wife's birthday, convinced the weather made an invasion impossible. The panzer divisions that might have counterattacked could not move without Hitler's personal approval, and that approval did not come until the afternoon. Meanwhile, Howard's men held. German infantry came down the road and were thrown back. When armored vehicles approached, a gunner named Private Gray and his comrades knocked out the lead vehicle with an anti-tank weapon, and the rest pulled away. The bridges the German tanks needed to cross were held by the very men stopping them from crossing. Around 1 in the afternoon, the relief arrived. Lord Lovett's commandos, who had landed at Sword Beach, fought their way inland to the bridge, led by a piper named Bill Millen, playing Scottish bagpipes over the sound of gunfire. Howard, still soaked from the night crossing, shook Lovett's hand on the bridge his men had held for more than 10 hours. The cost to Howard's small force was 2 men killed and 14 wounded, a tiny number for what they had done. The Canal Bridge was renamed Pegasus Bridge, after the winged horse emblem of the British Airborne. For all the images of Omaha Beach and the men wading through surf, the truth is simpler and stranger. Before the first landing craft dropped its ramp, before the first American reached the sand, the eastern door to the invasion had already been slammed shut and locked. It was locked by 181 men who flew in without engines, landed in the dark, and took a bridge in 10 minutes. Germany lost its best chance to stop D-Day before D-Day had even begun.